Single dad got stuck with the CEO. What he did in the elevator changed a $3 billion smart building. The $3 billion skyscraper was the pride of the city, towering glass, AI-driven security, and elevators that supposedly never failed. But one ordinary morning, fate decided to test that claim. A single father, exhausted from juggling 2 jobs, stepped into the elevator with someone he didn't recognize, an immaculately dressed woman, radiating quiet power. Moments later, the elevator jolted, lights flickered, and the machine ground to a halt. Trapped between steel and silence, 2 very different lives collided. What happened next not only exposed the hidden cracks in the smart building, but also altered the future of the entire company behind it. Michael Harris was a single dad, a man of routine, carrying the invisible weight of responsibility. Each morning began before dawn, packing his daughter's lunch, dropping her off at school, then rushing across town to work his maintenance shift. Though overlooked in his grey uniform, Michael knew every pipe, wire, and bolt of the skyscraper that towered above the city. To outsiders, he blended into the background, one of the many invisible workers who kept the billion-dollar building running. Yet behind his tired eyes was a man who had once dreamed of being an engineer. Life, however, had demanded sacrifice. When his wife passed away, he traded his studies for survival, focusing on raising his daughter alone. The skyscraper he worked in wasn't just any building. It was hailed as a marvel of technology. The CEO often boasted about it. Climate-controlled floors, self-adjusting glass, and elevators programmed with AI to predict traffic before anyone even pressed a button. For the wealthy tenants, it was proof of progress. For workers like Michael, it was simply another place where the machines mattered more than the humans maintaining them. On that particular morning, Michael was late. His daughter had forgotten her homework, and he had doubled back to deliver it. Breathless, he entered the lobby, swiped his badge, and stepped into an elevator. A woman in a sleek black suit entered just before the doors closed. She didn't glance at him, lost in her phone. Michael didn't know it yet, but she was Eleanor Price, the CEO who had built her empire on the very floors above his head. Seconds later, the impossible happened. The lights blinked. The car lurched violently. And in a heartbeat, Michael and the CEO were suspended in silence. The elevator stopped dead between floors. At first, it seemed like a minor glitch, something the system would auto-correct in moments. But as minutes stretched on, the silence grew heavier. Eleanor finally looked up, annoyance flickering across her face. Michael pressed the emergency intercom. No response. He tried again. Nothing. The AI-driven system, designed never to fail, had gone completely dark. He took a deep breath, scanning the panel. His years of maintenance work gave him a sixth sense about these machines. Something about the jolt didn't feel like a routine failure. It was systemic, a cascade, the kind of problem that could cripple the entire building if left unchecked. Eleanor crossed her arms, impatient. To her, he was just another worker. But Michael didn't waste time explaining himself. He knelt by the access panel, pried it open, and began checking circuits. His hands moved with confidence, though sweat beaded on his forehead. The minutes dragged. The air thickened. Michael thought of his daughter, waiting at school for him to pick her up later. He couldn't fail her, not today. Then he noticed something alarming. The fail-safe brake hadn't fully engaged. One wrong surge of power and the elevator could plummet. His heart pounded. He realized they weren't simply trapped. They were in danger. Eleanor's tone sharpened. She demanded to know what he was doing, but Michael kept his focus. He explained, in steady words, that the building's AI system had overridden the human controls. The perfect design had no backup for human intervention. If he didn't act, the entire building's elevator network could lock up, or worse, malfunction catastrophically with hundreds of people inside. Eleanor's confidence wavered for the first time. The building she had called flawless was revealing its flaw. Using nothing but a screwdriver, a flashlight, and his memory of the wiring schematics, Michael rerouted the system manually. It was painstaking. Sweat dripped as sparks shot near his hands. But he pushed forward, guided by something greater than fear: responsibility. Eleanor watched, her expression shifting. She began to see not just a janitor, but a man with knowledge, precision, and unshakable composure under pressure. Finally, after nearly an hour, Michael managed to bypass the AI lock. The elevator shuddered, then slowly descended to the nearest floor. The doors slid open, revealing a cluster of panicked employees and security staff waiting. Eleanor stepped out first, heels clicking. Michael followed quietly, unnoticed by most. But Eleanor wasn't finished watching him. She had seen something she couldn't ignore. Later that evening, Eleanor sat in her corner office, the city skyline glowing behind her. On her desk lay the preliminary report: Systemic AI malfunction, human error not detected. The engineers praised the building's resilience, noting how the system had self-corrected. But Eleanor knew the truth. It wasn't the AI. It was the man in the grey uniform. She replayed the scene in her mind. The calm under pressure, the technical knowledge, the refusal to give in to fear. She remembered how close they had been to disaster, a multi-billion-dollar building, her legacy, nearly compromised by the very technology she had claimed was foolproof. And it was Michael, the invisible single father, who had prevented it. The next morning, she called for him. Michael arrived, nervously, expecting reprimand. Instead, Eleanor dismissed her aides and faced him directly. She asked him to recount exactly what he had done. Step by step, he explained, his voice steady, his words technical, yet clear. Eleanor realized he spoke, not like a janitor but like an engineer, a man who had once dreamed of building, not just maintaining. In that moment, she made a decision. Weeks later, the company made a quiet but powerful announcement. A new division was being created, one dedicated to human oversight of smart technology. Its mission: ensure that no system, no matter how advanced, would ever forget the irreplaceable value of human judgment. At the head of the division was Michael Harris. The news shocked the building staff. Some couldn't believe a janitor had been elevated to such a position. But those who had worked alongside Michael weren't surprised. They had always known his diligence, his quiet intelligence. Now the world would see it too. For Michael, the promotion wasn't about prestige. It was about security, for his daughter's future, for the people who lived and worked inside the towers of glass, and for the reminder that progress must never erase the human touch. Eleanor's empire changed that day, not because of technology, but because of humility. She realized that innovation without humanity is fragile. A machine can calculate, but only a person can choose to risk their safety for a stranger. Michael often walked past the elevator where it had all begun. He never spoke much about it, but each time he held his daughter's hand a little tighter, because he knew sometimes the most extraordinary changes begin in the most ordinary places. And the next time the building's AI reported perfect operations, Eleanor would smile quietly, knowing perfection wasn't in the system. It was in the people who dared to rise when everything else failed. Takeaway: in a world chasing flawless technology, it was a single dad, overlooked, underestimated, who proved that humanity is the greatest safeguard of all.